Welcome back. This is the lesson number 5. In this lesson, we will learn how to get the name of the partitions in the hard disk, because the full path of the files contain the name of partitions, and we don't know the names of the partitions in the hard disk of the user. So we should test and read all the characters from A to Z to see the names of the partitions. For example, in my hard disk here, I have 3 partitions, C and E and F. How you can know that I have these names? I may also have a partition Y and partition Z. To know the number of partitions in the hard disk and their names, first you import the os.path. Then we will know a small information. This information that the character function for any number from 65 to 90 represented as character. For example, if I type here car 65 and print the result, let's see. This is old execution. Let's see the new. Here the character A. If I change this to 66, you will get character B. If you change to 67, you will get character C, and so on, until you reach 90, you will get character Z. Okay. Let's cancel this. To get the names of the partition, we will create a function called partitions. In this function, we will make a list, empty list, to store the names of the partition, because we will test all the characters and the names of the partitions will saved in this list. So we will create an empty list, as we said, and we do a for loop for an index in range from 65 to 90. We will loop through all character. P equal character P plus this column and 2 backslash. Why? Because here, if you wanted to get this path, you will notice that this path is C and column and slash. And we add additional slash because we need it instead of writing our character. For here, you add the second slash instead of this. Okay. We will test if os.path.exist P. We will test if this character existed in the hard disk. You will add this character using the append function to the list. Okay. And after this, I want the function to return the list of the character existed in the hard disk. to execute this function, and let's store the reverse value in variable r and print r. Let's execute. Here, I'm sorry, I typed which line here. Sorry, it's not character, it's CHR. Here you will see that there is only a 3 characters which existed in the hard disk, C and E and F. Let's see my hard disk. Here, there's exact 3 characters, C and E and F. Okay. By this, we have get the names of the partitions. Okay. If I wanted to get the names of all the files inside the partition, what I do? I do another for loop, which loop through all partition of these partitions. So I will loop, because this function return a list, I will loop through this list and use walk function, which go inside the path and get the full path of all the files inside the path. In os.walk, I here to loop through the first partition is C, and after this become the second partition E, and after this become the third partition F. So I change in each loop, and also I will loop through the F list, which have the names of the files inside each folder in this partition. I will store the result in an array. Let's create here an array, empty array, or y, and make it empty. And here we will store the file name. No, I will not store the file name. I will store the combination between the file name and the path of the folder that contain this file. So os.path.join, and here D and file name. Now this ARRY list contain all the files inside the hard disk. Let's print this ARRY and execute. You will notice that it may take a long time to read all the files inside the hard disk because there is a huge number of files. Let's run. Let's wait 1 minute at least. If you get boring from this, you can skip the video. Okay, I will wait 1 minute. This function should loop through all the partitions and get all the files in the hard disk. It seems that this function will take a long time. So we will take another method to do this job. But first I wanted to show you that this operation take a long of time. Let's see an alternative for this. I will force the program to stop and make a multi-line here. And we will take another concept, which is a thread. What thread mean? A thread mean that you can do two processes from the program together, which mean you can do or run two programs in the same time, like you do when with your browser. Here you can open 2 tab or 3 tab. This something in the program called thread. We want also to do this in our ransomware, so the ransomware can run multi-tasks in the same time and save time and run very fast. First, let's explain the concepts of a thread. We will import a threading from the library, and we will do a function that print 100 letters. Let's see, type this function print letter. Okay, and here we will print a letter. This letter will pass to the function here. Let's call this function and pass a letter A and pass a letter B. Okay, let's also import function time to measure the performance of the program. And here I will do a for loop to repeat this number 100 times. Okay. In the first time, I will call the print function and pass the first letter, and in the second time I will pass also another character. And let's see, T start time dot time, and see the time after end, time dot end, time dot time. Let's print the difference between those time, so we get the duration. Time at the end minus time at start, and run the program. You will notice that this program take about 0 point. You will import the threading module. We agree with this. Second, you will also import the OS module used to enter the path. And we also create two arrays. Array number 1, which stores the full path of the file, and array number 2, which called plist, like we learned before. It's used to store the partition names that exist in the hard disk. Okay, let's do the partition function that gets or give us the name of partitions. We type here partition and we do for loop through the range of the letters from 65 to 90. And we will transform the value of these numbers to characters by CHR function, and also combine this character with colon and 2 backslash. After this, store the value in the variable b. And we will test if os.path.exist, if this character exists in the names of the partition. Add the name of this character to the list. Okay, and we will also make a function that list or loop through each partition using the awk function. Loop through partitions. We will first make the list of the extensions we wanted to encrypt. What you want to encrypt? I wanted to encrypt the PDF and image with extension GBAG and EXE extension, the extension of application, and DOCX, the extension of Word files, and MB4, the extension of videos, and also TXT, the extension of text file. And do the for loop through the awk function. We learned that it takes this form: GSBF NOS dot walk and boss I here in this function. Where I come from the header here, because we pass it to the function we will call it. Where I the names of the partition. Okay. And we will do for loop through the file names stored in the list F, which have all the file names in each partition, in each folder, like this. In this folder, the end folder, which has only files and not has another folder, this boss is stored in the variable D, and the names of those files, and if there are hundreds of files, also the names of these files stored in the variable F. Okay. Here we will store the full path, which is a combination from the path of the file D, directory of the files, and the file name. Okay, I wanted to split this full path and get the extensions of the file to examine this extension or to test this extension, because the extension is the last element in the list. So we type here -1 to get the last element, and we do here if the extension of the file in the path is exist in the list of extensions we wanted to interrupt, store the path of this file in the array array to use it for interruption later. Here we will create the thread. First, we type here this function if equal and type underscore mean underscore mean. This if is the main function. The execution of the program start from here, and we will type here thread1, create a thread which is a threading, not thread, and we bought the target function we wanted to execute, which is list for looping through the partitions. And the arguments args and pass here the parameter to the function. We wanted to send the path to the function. So here we will type a variable in which indicate to the path, to the partitions, which is the path. Like this. Here we have this partition. This is the path of the partition. We pass here to the function to loop through all the files inside these partitions. Where we get this partition name, we get it from the list B list that store the names of the partitions. We let it now, and we will back to this function again. Then we will start the thread. How you start the thread? We told that you type the name of the thread dot start function. We have 3 partitions in our hard disk here, so we will do a for loop through the 3 partitions. For n, which is the partition name, where the partition name in the list B list. So this loop will loop through all the names in the B list and walk through all the files inside each name with the name indicate for the partition, and get the full path of the file which have one of these extension and add it to the array function. First, we wanted to execute the partition function, so we will call this function, and also after getting the partition, getting the full path of all the files and storing those paths in the array function, we wanted to print this function. So we wanted to print this list. ARR. Let's wait until we get the result from this function. I think it will take a short time than the function without thread. Okay, you will notice here that the function print the buses inside the partition, but you will notice that it is a lower number of buses. Why? Because the function print the list without complete ending all buses in the list. So we here type t1.join. The purpose of t1.join is to wait until the thread finish, then print the array. So join function make the remain of the code wait until the thread finish its task. Let's execute again. Just wait for time. If you get bored from this, you can speed the video, but I think it will take a short time than without this thread. Okay, let's see another thing until the thread finish. There is also another method or another thinking method you can use to do the thread without using this for loop, just without using also the partition function. But if you can guess the name of the partitions without this function, for most computer, you will notice that there's for sure a partition called C, and there is also E and F. This is the default names for partitions in Windows, so you can expect it, and you don't need to do this function. Okay, just wait. Okay, here is the paths of all the files inside the hard disk. If you do this job without a thread, I'm sure that it will take a long time. Let's see from the beginning. We have here the partition C and all the files in the partition C is go down until we reach the partition E. It will take a long time, so we will use a scroll bar. Yes, you will notice here that this is the partition E, and those are all the files in the partition E, and also the partition F. Here is the partition F, and these are all the files in the partition F. This is the partition F name. By this, we have reached to the end of the video. See you in the next videos.